How's everybody doing?
Very good.
And are you liking your barn box yarn so far?
Very nice.
Yeah. What are you planning to knit with it, or what are you already knitting with it?
I am knitting the petal shawl.
Oh, nice.
And I've tried chart A 3 times, and I think third time's the charm.
Cool.
It takes a while to get focused.
Yeah, that pattern changes all the time. So it does have, once you get started with it, it does have it is intuitive after a while because the lines just follow. And you can tell if you get off, you know.
I did the we had a barn box last year, a while ago, that was the Tarji, and it was the same, the same kind of right twists, left twists, and I got into that.
Yeah, correct. Actually, I didn't remember that about the twisted stitches, but you're right.
It's a beautiful shawl.
Thank you. I'm already working on a tank short sleeve top in the pattern. Like, this is my swatch, and when I see it vertically like that, I just want a little, top with a optional sleeve lengths or no sleeves. I just think it's.
Can you hold up the sample a little higher?
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
It's probably not going to be, the texture isn't going to be as visible unless I kind of do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Nice.
I'm doing
one thing I have
also.
to. What's that?
I'm doing the shawl also, and you're helping me learn. I have never done a provisional cast on before.
Oh.
So this is a new thing.
Oh, wow. You know what? I'm not sure I have a video on YouTube for that, but it's definitely in like one of my Karasi classes somewhere.
You do have it, because I went back and watched it.
Is it in YouTube or on a?
The Knit Spot. Knit Spot. I just Googled it. I must have mentioned it somewhere along the line for me to go.
I mean, I can't imagine that I haven't done one on provisional cast on, but I'm don't remember everything I did anymore. So one thing I have to confess about the shawl, about the sample of the shawl, the pattern should be all good. But when I knit the prototype / sample, which is the only sample we have thus far, I, of course, didn't know how long my yarn would last. So I worked the patterns the way I thought the depth would go. And I did use a full skein of yarn for my sample, but I only had like this much left at the end of the bind off, like literally. I was lucky to get the whole thing in there. So my sample is about 12 rows longer than the actual petite size. And it has more, and it has a section D in it, which the petite pattern does not. So I'm gonna hold it up and hope that you can see it. In the sample, those large petals that are near the bottom, you see there's like 3 tiers of them. You'll really just have, if you're doing the petite size, you'll really just have like one of those, and then the top section you'll have more of the small leaves than I have in mine, if that makes sense. And I'm sorry, there just wasn't time to knit another sample, and I'm sorry we don't have a sample that is more reflective of the actual pattern. So this little petite sample is probably more reflective of the medium size. It's kind of like a hybrid between the medium and the petite size in actuality. And I apologize for that. It's really hard to know in advance. And if we had gotten the yarn maybe a couple months earlier, I just would have knit it over again. It wouldn't have been a big deal, but I didn't have that much time. So, but it's a nice shawl. It's solid, but it's not heavy, and it'll be really great for fall. Or like if you're traveling, I always bring one of these triangles when I'm traveling, always, because I'm always cold on the plane. There's always a draft on my neck. So I always want something like right on my neck. And then, you know, the weather tends to change wherever I am. Sometimes I don't like to bring a heavy coat with me. So I bring a lightweight coat, but then I have accessories to pile on to keep warm if I have to. And a shawl like this, you can even throw it over your lap. I just love these little triangles. And then they pack away into a little, you know, space in your bag. They don't take up any room. And then they're easy to wash when you get home too, because they're not that big. We also have a sample of that little scarf knit up here.
That's pretty too. It's
so pretty, and we're very lucky that someone agreed to knit that for us. She knitted according to the pattern. There's the number of repeats in the pattern, and it is called That Little Scarf. So it is just a little scarf to throw around your neck and tie in a knot at your throat. And the original was designed for a cashmere yarn that actually did relax more and grow more. But and I'll weigh this in a minute. The skein of yarn that you receive will make a much longer scarf. Let me just go weigh this so I can tell you how much longer you could make this. Yeah, this weighs only 2¼ ounces. So you could actually make this almost twice as long. Yeah. And it's such a pretty, like rustic, I feel like it really harkens to the American craft movement patterns, you know, those really cool early deco carvings and imprints and even pottery designs that were done at that period. I've always just loved this stitch pattern, and worked in a rustic yarn. It's just very organic looking. I think it would be really pretty also in stone soup fingering, which, you know, everything would be better in stone soup fingering. Yeah, it's really nice in the cotton. It has, the stitches are being, it's a fairly complex pattern. It's not super easy to work, but it's very repetitive. So once you learn it, it's not that hard. But the stitches are constantly pulled in all different directions, and it makes them kind of crookedy, like a real growing vine would be. It's very pretty. And we have a little kit for it. When we received our yarn, there were about 50 skeins that were underweight. And when we opened up a few and counted the strands, they were also short on yardage. So we could have shipped them back for a refund, but by the time you pay shipping, we paid shipping in, and by paying shipping back, we would have just been paying more for them. So we decided to make the special kit for the scarf. You should have still plenty of yarn to make this a longer scarf with that little kit. And it's a pretty good deal for $29. You get that skein of yarn plus the pattern. And the yarn itself is first quality. It's just not in the quantity that would make it a first quality product.
How do you count the strands of yarn in a skein?
Very patiently and without listening to anybody talk to you at the same time, if you can. So you know, depending on the mill, the way the mill puts it up, we actually, most of our skeins are put up in 72-inch hanks. So or skeins. And if you count the strands on one of the sides of that circle, and multiply by 2, that will be your yardage of the whole skein.
Oh.
So
my house.
So if you're expecting your skein to have 440 yards, there should be 220 strands in a 72-inch loop, and then multiply by 2. Plus or minus, you know, with the artisan mill yarns, the consistency throughout the skein is not always super precise. Yep. So sometimes you get a few more yards or a few less yards, but generally we can count on our mills to be pretty accurate. All right, so this month we have a beautiful wool and cotton blend. The mill that we get this spun at is particularly well suited to work with cotton because it's a woolen spun mill. So they only do woolen spun yarns there. And they're, and to spin cotton is a super short fiber, and to spin cotton, you really do have to, you have to have like a woolen spun, you have to use a woolen spun prep to make the fiber stick together. If you can comb cotton, but if you, in these situations, if you comb it, you're gonna pretty much destroy the, you know, any chance you have of making, you know, kind of a rope out of it for spinning purposes. So it's blended here with Targhee wool, which we have done in Barn Box before when we introduced our Targhee yarns last year. Targhee, I'll just very briefly say, Targhee is a soft, fine fiber that is a cross between Lincoln, Corriedale, and Rambouillet sheep. So the largest kind of percentage of the genetics coming from the Rambouillet. It's nice and bouncy, and it's a great fiber to marry cotton with because the softness, the affinity in softness is there, and the kind of stickiness and bounciness of the Targhee will capture that cotton and keep it blended in really nicely.
I absolutely never thought.
Oh, Karen, Karen, could you?
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. The blending of this fiber is so it's a woolen spun, meaning it's carded, but not combed and not pin drafted. By the way, these skeins are unwashed. So this is one of the yarns that we sell, which the fiber has been scoured and is clean of, you know, field dirt and nature. But once the yarn is spun and plied, it is not washed again. So this mill conserves on water by not washing again, because many people who buy commercial products from them, like we do on a commercial level, are going on to dyeing it anyway, and they're going to have to wet the yarn and wash it to dye it. So they're just saving water by eliminating that step for their commercial customers. And so because we receive the yarn undyed and keep it that way, our customers also receive it in an undyed state. And what this means is that in the skein, the yarn itself is going to feel a little more like string, and especially with the cotton content, it's going to feel a little more like string. It's not going to be very elastic because it's been stretched during the spinning process, and it'll seem kind of flat, and it's even a little bit it retains some of the spinning oil and a little bit of the dust and dirt that naturally will fly around the mill. Now, this mill does use only organic canola oil for their spinning oil. So you're not getting a petroleum-based product in this yarn. So even though it's unwashed, the oil that remains on it should not be irritating unless you're allergic to canola in some way. So then when you wash it, and I highly encourage you to knit a swatch and wash it just for the fun of it. But since you have to swatch for a project anyway, and when you swatch for a project, you really must wash your swatch to get your final gauge. You won't really get an accurate final gauge without washing your swatch. And that really is true of any yarn, but it's especially true of these unwashed yarns. When you wash it, the twist and the elasticity will come back into the fibers. So the natural crimp of the targhee will be reactivated, and it will squish up and become a bouncier, squishier. It'll have the yarn strand will have more diameter, but I don't want to say it's like thick or dense. It's still going to be a very airy yarn. The woolen preparation and the woolen process leaves the fiber in the yarn in a more chaotic arrangement. And so the construction of the yarn encompasses a lot of air because the fibers are not pulled straight and combed straight to be silky. They're combined almost like a bird's nest in the carding stage, and then just drawn out enough to spin. So they maintain a lot of that airy, open quality even after spinning. And when you wash the yarn, you'll see that this yarn will be nice and soft. It'll be squishy, and it won't be necessarily super smooth. It might have a little halo to it. Definitely a more matte finish than many cotton, even cotton blend yarns will offer. But it does have a tiny bit of sheen to it. Cotton really does have a nice kind of shiny surface when it's clean. The cotton is a heavier fiber than wool, and it will add some weight to the blend technically, but again, the woolen prep and mixing it with the wool will aerate that that propensity of cotton to mat together and form a dense clump. And the wool will break that up and keep it airy, and also provide some wicking of moisture in the blend that cotton by itself doesn't necessarily provide. So that's a little bit about the yarn. Does anybody have questions about the yarn itself? Or about using it, or is anything I said about it super confusing or mixing you up? Liz, did you have a question? Audrey?
I wonder if we have the fingering, does the DK weight behave the same way, or does the thicker strand make it do anything different? Sometimes it feels like the fingering weight and the DK weight do behave differently.
The fingering weight is probably going to have a little bit tighter twist than the DK. To be honest, I haven't knit anything with the DK. Barb has been knitting a sweater with it. She's knitting the misters with the DK, with a dyed version of the same DK yarn. So this mill sells this fiber in dyed colors. And she bought some to give it a try. So she's actually knitting with a washed version that has already been, you know, the twist is already reactivated. It's very squishy and airy in the, you know, from what I can see, and she just loves knitting with it. So she feels like it's really light. If the DK had that tighter twist, it might feel a little denser.
Well, what your other cotton wool blend, the Ginny, you kind of recommended for people who have sensitivities to wool. And I have a couple of those in my family. So I was just wondering if I use the DK weight for something. My daughter's not going to wear a shawl, but she might wear a sweater if that. So I was just wondering.
I think if you, did you, I couldn't tell from what you said if you had like bought an experimental skein or not of the DK.
No.
Okay.
I haven't yet.
I would say that if you knit a swatch of the fingering and she like put it in her bra for a few hours, that would tell you all you need to know. Okay. I don't think in character, I don't think the DK would differ. Nothing about the spinning would make her be more sensitive to it.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Yeah. But something you just said made me want to say something that I'm losing track of.
Well, the Ginny pill.
Oh, about the Ginny. Yeah. The Ginny is a blend of cotton. It still has 20% cotton. It's, I think, 40% alpaca or 50% alpaca. And then it has 20% merino. Maybe it has 25% cotton. And then there's like 5% nylon in it. So it's largely, the largest fiber content is the alpaca in that. And it is the de-haired alpaca, same as is in the Better Breakfast. So that blend is truly unique. And a little bit denser because alpaca doesn't have the airiness that wool has. Anybody else have a question? Jean, did you have a question?
Yeah, so my question is, I always think about, okay, cotton with wool, because they will wash differently. Wool will react differently, just generally, than cotton. How does that work when you mix them together and they're going to act a little different when you're washing it? Do they compensate you?
When you say act a little different, what are you thinking?
Like, I think when I do just something that's purely cotton, it has a tendency to grow. And the wool would not necessarily have that tendency. So now you're fighting. So can it still be a really clean? Well, I mean, I'll find that out. But how smooth can the fiber still be when you've knitted it and then washed it? Will it bring texture because of the combination of the two or not?
Well, first of all, when you blend fibers, remember, when you blend fibers appropriately, they wouldn't be fighting each other. So you're really taking the best of both and elevating the best qualities of both. So what you see in a cotton wool blend, and this blend is a good example, and other blends that we've had, is that the cotton, and by the way, the cotton that we use is organic and it's unmercerized, and so it's very, very soft. It does behave more like a very fine animal fiber in terms of spinning it. So it's not treated with a bunch of chemicals to straighten it and make it shinier and make it silkier. So first of all, that. And when you blend it, it gets blended pretty well. It gets interspersed with the wool pretty well. So the better it's blended, the more balance you'll get between the two types of fiber. And so they can support each other. Cotton will lend a bit of silkiness to a blend. It'll add a little bit of sheen. It's a little bit like a vegetable version of silk in that way. It doesn't have a crimp. It's not elastic. It's not, it absorbs water, but it doesn't wick water along its fiber length like wool does. So it will retain some water. The more cotton in a blend, the more cotton characteristics will show. And depending on what kind of wool you blend it with, they might, you might get a lot more of the cotton characteristics, you know, coming out. So for instance, if you combine it with a heavier wool, or in the instance where we blended it with alpaca, which is a fine fiber but heavy for its size and not and won't make like an as airy a yarn as wool, the cotton and the alpaca together do make like a silkier yarn, a yarn that's less elastic. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Jean, but the point is that by blending the two fibers, again, you're not asking them to fight with each other. You're asking them to support each other's good characteristics or desirable characteristics, and to, you know, let some of the undesirable characteristics drop out. And so when you add cotton to wool, you'll get a softer surface. I like to kind of think of it as when you make a rag paper with 100% cotton, it has that cottony, that flannelly surface. The paper does. It's very absorbent feeling, and it's very matte. And cotton will bring an even chalkier appearance to the wool than it would already have, which Targhee is a chalkier fiber. It will make it take a little longer to dry. I don't think what you're picturing is that it might cause like puckering in the yarn. I don't think you're necessarily going to see that. That would be more a function of the fact that it's woolen spun and unwashed than that the fiber blend is causing it. One thing I did notice is that the cotton being so short and wool just being naturally longer, cotton can get a little slippery in the spinning process and cause some slubs. So I didn't see any gigantic slubs in this blend as I was working through, but there are little tiny slubs within the plies that make it almost tweedy, which I personally like. So you see little bits of bright white in there and little bits of vegetable matter from the cotton. You know, with cotton yarn, you'll get little bits of seed husks and stuff if the cotton isn't super refined. So you'll get a little bit of that in this yarn as well. Does that help, Jean? I hope I'm not being too confusing.
No, actually, that made total sense.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. If you blend cotton, especially the very short cottons, with fiber that's too long or too different in weight and diameter, you're going to get some of that. We talked about this yesterday, and some of you probably weren't here yesterday, but you're going to get some of that imbalance in the yarn where the long fiber goes to the core and the short fiber wraps around it on the outside, and it creates like an imbalanced blend. So no matter how well you blend it, when you spin it, the centrifugal force of spinning is going to separate it a bit. That's not the case here. These fibers do marry well. Pam.
Hey, I think you answered a lot of it. I had put some of it in the chat, but then they said to raise my hand. So I wanted to know the name of the mill because I might like to purchase a dyed skein of the DK. I think I might like a garment out of that and something instead of something that's so light colored for me. But then the other thing was what are you trying to achieve when you're combining the cotton and the wool? And I think you answered a lot of it as to what maybe it is, but are you looking for garments that have a little bit more drape, or, you know, I guess that's what I was really wondering is when you do this, what is your, you know, hey, this is why I'm doing it and what's the goal, which goes along with the, you know, is cotton going to grow? So if I make it into a garment, am I expecting it to, if I hang it, is it going to grow? But I think it's 20%. So it's not, the wool is going to allow it to bounce back. Those are the type of questions I was thinking of. So thanks.
Yeah, I think, you know, getting back to the question you had about why would you do this? The cotton does add, because it's a non-elastic fiber and it's very straight and it does have a little bit of sheen, it's a little bit slippery. It does add some, it does soften some of the tendency of the Targhee to be very crimpy and airy. So for instance, the Targhee Tango that we have, when I knit with that, I feel like it blooms so much that it's not like it makes a dense fabric, but it almost makes a stiffer fabric because of that. And the cotton definitely softens that tendency. This blend just doesn't feel like that super contracted wash fabric that I see with the Targhee. So certain kinds of stitch patterns might benefit from that. Like these twist stitch patterns are probably softened a little bit by that. The other thing the other goal in adding cotton is to add a little comfort to the fabric, especially with these woolen spun yarns. You're going to have a lot of fiber ends in a yarn like this. Some people may find that that's kind of makes their neck feel sensitive, or it makes it feel itchier. The cotton will counteract some of that and give you a little bit of a buffer on the surface of the fabric and within the fabric itself. And along with all those characteristics, the drape of the fabric is going to be improved a bit too. You know, if the fabric is less stiff, it's going to be more likely to be just a little bit more flowy and liquid. So again, in my mind, adding to the comfort of a, you know, warm season garment. And for me, those are important things for 2 or 3 seasons of the year. There are many days in the fall and spring that I still want a sweater, but I don't want to feel overly warm or overly constricted, or, you know, like I can't, or like it's just too wintry. And the cotton just gives you that little bit of lightness in the fabric to counteract the wool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And actually, you know, being in California, this really helps in a lot more seasons for us. Like even, yes, you know, almost all the way through, even into winter for us. So this makes, you know, instead of the really thick, you know, rustic wool, which gets, you know, we just don't have that type of a season here. So then this makes it more something that can be used a lot more out here. So
yeah,
yeah.
cotton is very cooling to the skin, and it does help to defray, like I said, some of that prickliness. And if you're gonna knit with wool for your climate, you want to knit with lightweight woolen spun wools that are going to breathe. But the fuzziness of those can be counteracted with just a small measure of cotton to soften it.
Right. Okay. So do you have the name of the mill, or should we just email you separately? I mean, because I'd like to maybe purchase ones that are dyed in another color. So that's what that's.
I mean, generally we don't talk about our sources.
Right. I know. I'm sorry.
But this does come from Green Mountain Spinnery, and they're
okay.
And they do offer the dyed.
Yeah, I've ordered from them before, so that's good. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And this is a custom product from them for us. So I think I'm trying to remember what weights they do. I think the weight of this, the fingering weight, as well as the color, was a custom order. I can't remember offhand if they had this in fingering yarn. I think we ordered it that way, and because they don't carry it.
I just finished a sweater in Cotton Comfort, which is the same. It's the same blend, and it's DK. It's DK.
That's what Barb is knitting with. Yeah, it's really nice.
I like it. And
of course, you're gonna receive it washed, so it's gonna be different than this.
Mm-hmm.
When this fingering is washed, it almost has a similar twist to the Stone Soup fingering. I really like it.
It looks a lot like Stone Soup's fingering.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really durable.
I like Stone Soup fingering too. We have a lot of sweaters in Stone Soup fingering.
That's awesome. I love it. So cotton is a fiber that it goes back so far. The cultivation of it goes so far back in time that its origins are not really known. But the Egyptians cultivated cotton. It's been cultivated in Africa and the Middle East, since before time has been recorded. It was first domesticated in the Americas at least 4,500 years ago for animal feed, and then in this case it bore. I'm sorry, I'm losing my words. The cotton domesticated in the Americas, and also some of the African Egyptian cottons have indigenous strains that grow in colors, and we did those in our clubs years ago. So so cotton can be grown in shades of brown, like everything from beige to a fairly dark khaki color, a whole range of green tones and greenish grays, as well as some more rare tones that are purplish, beet red, and kind of like a rusty, like a deep rusty sweet potato color. Those are very rare. The more intense the color, the more rare it is. And those have been cultivated by indigenous people for centuries, and was almost lost, just like with wool, with the push toward cultivating bright white fiber for the industrialized textile market. Colored wools, colored cottons fell out of favor and were almost practically lost, but are now grown mainly in Peru, in some places in the United States, very little here, and in India. The original khaki fabrics that were that have been worn by military personnel for I don't know how long. That was all the color grown cotton. The original khaki was, because it was a tougher cotton fiber and it was produced in quantity in India and Africa, was taken up by the military and the British military and used for khaki uniforms. You know, the cooler summer weather uniforms that they wear, kind of their everyday garb. Let's see. Cotton is one of the largest crops grown globally. There's a huge demand for cotton worldwide for clothing in particular. And because of that, there are numerous challenges and numerous ways that cotton is quite a dirty product to produce. And I'll get into that a little bit in a little bit, but I just want to also tell you a few facts about the historical significance of cotton. Let's see. So first of all, some of the, it is now known that some of the oldest examples of knitting in particular were produced around the year 1000 in the regions around Egypt and the Middle East. And the oldest uncovered examples of knitted fabric were discovered in the 1990s, actually. They were complex color work knitted designs for stockings and socks and little purses and things like that, knit with cotton and silk yarns that were white and dyed with indigo dye. So cotton goes all the way back to the first knitted fabrics, which I think is really cool. Like, it wasn't wool initially; it was cotton and silk, and the if you look this up on the internet, you'll find, like, if you just Google like earliest examples of knitted fabric, the designs are quite beautiful and very complex. They're stockings that have shaped heels and toes, circular colorwork designs. Some of the colorwork designs have words knitted into them and dates, and are reminiscent of kind of Greek design work, Greek frieze work and carvings and symbols. So it's definitely worth. One of the pieces I'm looking at has, I would share it, except it's in a document that I have here. It has 3 different shades of blue and white, and the blues include like indigo blue, but also like a cerulean blue. So so these were examples of knitted cotton fabric with highly complex designs, which means these weren't like the first knitted fabrics. These were quite advanced, maybe in and of themselves indicative of skills that have been around already for hundreds of years. So cotton is, it's one of the largest crops grown. Well, it is probably the largest crop grown in China, and also in many other countries. India produces a ton of cotton. There are other African countries that also produce a lot of cotton. It's produced in, as I said, South America, in Peru. I have a list. I'm sorry, I have a list somewhere of all the different I think there are 11 countries that produce 97% of the world's cotton. And very few of them are producing an organic product. So while cotton is one of the, most challenging, it's a crop that challenges our ability to be eco-friendly. There is very little kind of migration to an organic product. Only 1/5 of 1% of all the cotton grown in the world is organically produced. So we kind of have a long way to go with that. It looked like for a while that we were going in the right direction with reducing pesticide use or reducing insecticide use, and coming up with alternative genetics for seeds that would help to mitigate some of the, challenging parts of growing cotton. Cotton as a crop is, it's highly attractive to a wide range of insects. So the boll weevil, attracts all kinds of thrips and fleas and things like that. And so even if you can get rid of the boll weevil, then you're disturbing the population of other insects, invasive insects that would have been controlled by the boll weevil. And, the problems with actually producing cotton that you can grow without intervention is very difficult. So cotton uses 25% of all the pesticides used globally are used on cotton. I went back, I wrote about this 10 or 12 years ago in our B&K 2013, I think was the first one, or 2012. And I wanted to know this year, what has changed? Maybe things have improved. We claim to be trying to get this right. What's happening? And as today, someone's not muted and is talking. So,
scratchy thing in my throat.
Liz, are you muted? Are you talking?
I had a good ride once I got through the.
Liz, are you talking? Could you mute yourself if you're talking?
Well, London didn't care at all. Thor was extremely reasonable about the whole thing. Only Irish was like an idiot.
Liz?
Yeah. Oh, it is. I do too. Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
And I think you can mute her. If you
good idea.
slide your mouse over her, and then I think you can.
I don't have a mute. Let me see if I can find her in the participants. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay. Just in case that's who it is. I'm sorry, everybody. I didn't mean to yell or point her out. Anyway, so pesticides include insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Those are all things that are used on crops to mitigate insects, weeds, and fungal issues. When in trying to, improve cotton production to still produce high amounts of cotton without all of the pesticides used, a lot of the seed companies started coming up with genetically modified cotton seeds that can grow and at the same time deter pests, deter insects. Well, that works out. I mean, insecticide use has reduced by 97% in the last, say, 20 years. But unfortunately, unfortunately, herbicide use has increased by almost the same amount. So while one mitigation is happening, it's causing situations where other mitigations are required in even greater quantity. It doesn't solve reducing attraction to insects doesn't solve your problems with fungal growth and things like that. And then the other thing is that without that, with the one of the problems with insects is that if they tend to live and breed in perennial foliage. So a good way to grow cotton, a better way to grow cotton, and you know, in Peru and other places, it is a lot of it, the organic cotton is grown this way, is to allow it to be the perennial plant that it is. Cotton doesn't need to be planted every year. It can grow and grow. It will grow very deep roots. It will grow very large plants that are highly productive if you leave it in the ground. But if you've got insect problems, that will just kind of breed insects. So what a lot of farmers do in the US and elsewhere is to pull the plants out every year to get rid of the insect eggs and any fungal, you know, viruses that might stay in the plants or in the leaves. And so those plants don't drop their leaves and provide kind of a mulch for the land around them. And so the dirt that they're planted in is constantly being used, but not replenished with dead matter. So because of that, acreages that have been planted in cotton need to be fertilized more every year. So for 1 acre of cotton each year requires about 360 pounds of fertilizer just for 1 acre. So that's going into the ground too. The fertilizers and pesticides that are used on cotton, and it's not just cotton, you know, other crops are treated the same way. Cotton is just really intense this way. It requires really quite a bit more than lots of other crops. So the runoff of this chemical, of all these chemicals, is staying in the dirt. It goes into the groundwater. When it goes into the dirt and is heated by high temperatures of the sun, it creates gases that are, you know, hundreds of times more lethal than CO2 gas. So it doesn't just stay in the ground, it becomes airborne, it leaches into the waters and affects many creatures outside of that ecosystem of the farmland. So it affects humans, it affects birds and beneficial insects elsewhere, and as well as grazing animals. So our traditional ways of growing cotton are problematic. And part of it is that there's just so much demand. You know, people, the fast fashion industry encourages people to keep buying, you know, new t-shirts every year, and in some cases they make products that don't last. So you do have to keep replacing them. Shopping more carefully, of course, would, and more judiciously, wearing clothes for longer, or using old clothing for rags and other uses is all, you know, doing a little bit here and there to mitigate some of these effects. So I'm gonna kind of leave that there. There's a lot of information about this on the internet for you to discover. A lot of it is conflicting. I try to read research papers. I try to read university articles put out by universities and conservancy watch groups to balance, you know, different points of view. I do like to always check when I read different studies, who is funding the study, and you know, and how do the results of that study compare to other studies. So it's really important to, I have to dig deep to feel responsible for that. But just remember that, you know, if you just read one article about a subject like this, especially, this shouldn't be controversial, but it is, especially a controversial subject. You want to know where it's coming from, so that you're getting a balanced opinion or a balanced deduction. Cotton also uses a ton of water. You know, it's out there in lots of places. It takes 713 gallons of water to produce one cotton t-shirt. So that's enough water to sustain a person for 2.5 years. So that's like, that's a lot. That's a lot. That is not to say that plenty of other commodities that we use are not also hogging a lot of water. We, as fiber artists, I bring this up, you know, in many of the Barn Box. I'm just going to mute everybody. I'm sorry about that. Let me see. Okay, I'll undo that in a few minutes. I just muted everybody so we don't get those sounds. Anyway, you would think then that the answer would be in organic cotton. However, organic cotton, while much, much better, first of all, it's still a very, very tiny portion of the cotton of the total cotton production of the world. The other thing is that organic cotton is less efficient to grow, so it requires more acreage, more water. Organic farmers are working with organic materials, but they still need to use fertilizers and pesticides, insecticides. They're just organic ones. And so while they're not poisoning the environment, they are still in some ways interrupting the natural cycle of things. So organic farmers still deal with some of the same challenges that traditional farmers do, in that, you know, you kill off one bug, then another bug takes over because it's not controlled. Oh shoot, there was something I was gonna say to piggyback on that. It'll come to me. One of the things that is successful is that organic farmers who are using insect management methods rather than insecticides to kill off challenging bugs are the ones that are likely to have healthy farms ongoing. So let's say I have a problem with a boll weevil, let's say that there's a known predator for the boll weevil that I can introduce into my growing area to manage the population. that choice will help to manage that situation, for not just now, but into the future, and will help to bring the total situation into a more manageable state overall and ongoing. So that's one thing that organic farmers can do that not all are doing. Also, traditional farmers can introduce some of those same methods if they're, you know, taught to. I did listen to a really interesting program. This was actually last summer. It was a program that had several scientists, agricultural scientists from Ohio State University, and it was an in-state kind of radio show that was interviewing people. And one of the things that kind of came out of there, it was about climate change and how to change farmers' kind of attitudes and abilities in dealing with climate change, and how to get the discussion around it away from like political, you know, opinions, and into, you know, reality that the climate is changing, that people are seeing that it's affecting their land and their crop production, et cetera, et cetera. And one overwhelming thing that came out of this was that if growers are focused and kind of, if the conversation with growers is focused on mitigation and how to go forward and increase, keep yields high while decreasing the cost, they are very open. They are much more open to measures that are considered, you know, organic or climate friendly. So going at the problem from more of an economic standpoint, more of a, you know, this is very doable and much cheaper to do it this way, is way more successful. And there are programs developing, at least throughout our state, that are focusing on these methods in teaching growers how to deal with the climate crisis that's, you know, affecting them very greatly. Let's see. One of the you know, things that people can do to, you know, maybe reducing their use of cotton is to consider other cellulose fibers, other vegetable fibers that are comparable and at least at this stage, more climate friendly to grow. So other vegetable fibers that have similar qualities to cotton that are coming into focus that way are linen, which requires almost no water or intervention and can be grown organically very easily. Especially the linen grown in Europe has a pretty healthy profile. Hemp is another fiber choice that has a lot of the same qualities as cotton and some even better ones, and is now legal to grow in the United States, I believe, just about everywhere, which is a really nice benefit that we get from the legal cannabis industry. Well, the hemp that we use for fiber isn't related to the cannabis that people use as marijuana. Somehow in our legal system, they were linked together decades and decades ago, and growing hemp in the United States was illegal for many years because it was falsely thought that it was related to marijuana. So ramie is another natural plant fiber that that can be used and worn like cotton in many of the same kinds of garments, and has a lot of the same wonderful qualities. And those are all fibers that are slightly better choices at this point. Let's see. I mentioned before about the mercerization process in cotton. The cotton that we use in our yarns is not mercerized, and mercerization is a process by which, you know, like I mentioned, cotton is very soft. It's because it's so soft, you have to spin it either very tightly to make it durable, or you have to treat it. And so spinning it tight enough can be challenging and time consuming and expensive. And so what a lot of companies began doing was mercerizing it, and which is a process of, I think they use lye to treat it, and then more or less it burns it. It makes it really, gives it like a harder surface. It's kind of like a polishing effect on the fiber itself. And you know, when you knit with cotton yarn that feels really hard and kind of hurts your hands, it's highly likely that it's mercerized. Unmercerized cotton behaves a lot more like wool. It's fluffier and softer. It might pull apart more easily depending on how tightly it's spun. But when you when it's spun, it's smoother, and then when you wash it, it blooms just like wool does, and it, you know, it gets a nice kind of soft cashmere-y hand to it. And the fiber that we use in our yarn, like I said, is unmercerized, and that's another reason why it melds so nicely with the wool, is that it has the open fibers, and they're able to kind of catch and blend with the wool really nicely. All right, I'm gonna unmute so people can ask questions. I guess it's gonna ask all to unmute. There we go. Okay. All right, Pam.
I have a question. I know you talked about the different types of bugs, basically. So if I'm storing my garment, let's say, you know, or whatever it is, usually with wool, we're putting like cedar or lavender or something like that. You know, after you wash it and then you store it away and you try to put something in there. Is there something that I should be doing in addition if a yarn has cotton in it, or is that enough, or do I need to worry about that? I know, you know, every day you have cotton stuff, but usually you're wearing your t-shirts and stuff, so you're washing them in a washing machine and, you know, folding them away. But if I'm
not mistaken, the problem with insects on cotton plants is that they're eating the plant. You know, they're eating the live material in the plant. They're feeding on juices and nutrition in the plant. So what we're spinning with is basically dead. You know, it's just the flower of the plant and the dry, and they, you know, they pick it and dry it, wash it and everything. By that time, I don't think there's anything for insects to really feed on. However, there are insects like silverfish and things that can get into your papers. They can get into your books and papers, and cotton fibers, of really fiber of any kind, and feed on that. I don't think that's anything you necessarily have to worry about unless it's a very large problem in your area. If you're using your cotton and cotton blend garments frequently and you're washing them once a year and keeping your spaces clean, it shouldn't be a problem. Silverfish get into areas that are not disturbed. So books that sit on shelves for years and years and never get opened, and the place never gets aired out, and they'll attack that kind of situation.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else have a question or want to say something?
Anne?
Yeah.
I just typed in a question for in general, and I don't remember that you mentioned bamboo as a fiber. What's your opinion of bamboo to knit with or to use as garment material?
Well, the thing about bamboo is that very, very little of the bamboo fiber that's available to us as knitters is actually the plant fiber as it comes from the plants. So what bamboo and what a lot of cellulose fiber is a synthetic fiber that's made from that cellulose source. Mm-hmm. So when we say like a yarn includes bamboo, mm-hmm. Almost always, and not always, but almost always, that is bamboo that has been treated with a ton of toxic chemicals, processed very toxically with they pound the bamboo down into a mush and make a slurry out of it, and then they extrude it as a plastic, combined with a lot of chemicals to make like a rayonized fiber.
Okay.
I'm not saying that there isn't plant bamboo out there. It's very rare.
I asked the question because I have purchased bamboo clothing and bamboo linens, and I like the fabric for that. And I was curious about your question as bamboo for knitting or work like that. And
obviously, it's blended into quite a few different yarns. I personally am not a huge fan of it. I mean, some bamboo yarns I've seen are like super droopy. They produce like a super droopy fabric that I can't stand. And then other times I've seen it incorporated where it's just kind of coarse, and I don't like that either. And the other thing about rayonized fibers, and I definitely have seen this in bamboo, is that when the fiber seems to have a half-life. Like it's fine, it's your favorite thing for like 7 years, and all of a sudden in the 8th year it develops like all these little hard balls and the fabric starts to deteriorate. Just all of a sudden it just
that is true. The fabric does deteriorate after a period of time, and that is
all of a sudden it doesn't
that
wear.
Is true.
It doesn't.
They say it's a renewable thing though, that it's easier as far as being a renewable item as opposed to some things. I mean, as far as farming it and things like that.
It definitely is a renewable resource. Yeah. It just depends what you're renewing it for. Like Tencel is also made from a renewable resource, which is most of it is made from eucalyptus tree saplings, like that really aren't even very old. But Tencel, but the chemicals that are used to make Tencel and the water that's used to make Tencel are way high recyclable, like in the high 90s, over 97% recyclable back into the process. And the process is a closed system. So it's not, it's not emitting toxins as a byproduct of the process.
And you like the hand of Tencel better than bamboo, obviously.
I do. I do. So.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Just 1 second, Sheen. Sorry, Jean, what was your question?
So first of all, I just want to say that was an incredible history lesson. I really appreciate it.
Really? I feel like it was all over the place, but there's just so much, you know, to fit.
Yeah, it stirs the curiosity too, so that's cool.
Yeah.
But I can't help but notice, and this is for Karen mostly, it's called Seasons Fingering, and this is summer, so I guess maybe we have a clue to the next 3 barn boxes.
Oh no, no, we wouldn't do 4 in a row, but well, we don't know if we're gonna keep this yarn in our lineup or not, so we might, if we do, we wanted to give it a name, the color a name. So if we do other shades, of course, that would be spring, summer, fall, and winter. So
okay.
Yeah, okay. We're thinking about it because we do like this yarn, and we have lots of designs that we made for the Ginny yarn, and we kind of lost that yarn suddenly. So we're thinking this might be a nice substitute, and in some ways even better. So depending on the feedback from all of you, and we welcome your feedback about this yarn, it may very well find a spot in our lineup.
Okay, so what I had figured, if this is summer, it's going to be another totally different yarn that's called fall.
Oh,
so now, okay, I'll dismiss that idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, the next yarn is a little fallish, but not for that reason. It has a little bit of a fallish theme to it. But you'll see that in the fall, in September.
So when do you think you'll have your t-shirt or your shirt complete that matches the shawl? I'm much more of a garment knitter. I do some shawls, but they usually tend to be like blank kind of winter shawls.
Well, Barb is going to knit it, and she's pretty fast. And then it has to go through tech editing, which usually takes a couple of weeks. And then it has to go through proofreading, which takes another week. So we kind of discussed this yesterday. Probably we won't see the pattern till September or so, if that, you know, hopefully before Rhinebeck, because it's always good to have fresh stuff for Rhinebeck. But I'm already, you know, organizing it. Just my time is like really, really stretched. So, but I'm working on it.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I have my Festivus stuff that I'm doing, and then there's Barn Box in September. So I've got like 3 projects that have to be, and I'm getting not cranking out, but we're finalizing the Knotty Pine sweater for Wednesday, and you know, there's like,
yeah,
the one I want.
And today the green beans have started coming in, and I picked 5 pounds the other day, and today I went out to pick, and there were 8 pounds to pick. So nice. I know it's all that stuff has to be frozen. So anyway, Geeka.
I just wondered, I can't remember what you said about the t-shirt pattern, whether it's the fingering weight or DK and the seasons.
It's going to be fingering weight.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really the same as the shawl, only in a t-shirt.
Okay. Any idea about like the quantity you'd need for it?
No.
Not yet. That's fine.
Yeah.
Just checking.
I mean, I would say 1 skein for front and back and 1 for sleeves. I don't know. I honestly, I can't. Sorry. Probably is similar to, trying to think if there's another. I would say probably similar to like Dandelion Honey, maybe. I'm not even going to conjecture. Sorry about that. Anybody else have a question or want to say something? We do still have in stock some of the colored cotton for those who are color cotton curious after today. I think we mostly have lace weight in stock. but we do have a variety of colors. There's some of the FIFO, which is the mauve purple color. There are some greens and some of the beiges and browns. So then that is a nice fine lace weight yarn. It has 500 yards in what, like 2 ounces or something. It's, but it makes a really pretty, super soft shawl that feels like cashmere. It's really nice. All right, well, let's see, any announcements? We have Yarn Discovery Tour beginning in September, the first week of September, right after Labor Day. We'll be starting to sell passports for that at the end of August. But way before that, by next week, we'll be starting our Rhinebeck sweater knit along is coming up. It's a really fun knit along. It begins August 6th and extends, it extends to October 8th. So it's literally like 10 weeks, gives you 9 or 10 weeks to knit a sweater to either wear to Rhinebeck or to wear to celebrate Rhinebeck wherever you are. The sweater knit alongs are, I think I can speak for everybody. They are super helpful, super fun, and everyone claims to get a lot out of them, as well as make regular progress on a sweater project. So it really does help to kind of discipline us and keep our projects moving. It'll signups are open. You can sign up anytime on our website. You get a free pattern download with your sign up, and the rest of the money goes into like a prize pool. So there are first prize is a gift certificate to our store. And then there are other prizes. And what else, you guys? Anything else anybody would need to know about the Rhinebeck sweater knit along? It's just a lot of fun. So please join us. They're very informative. People get to ask questions about patterns, and I'm always there to answer questions and help people with lighter level questions. You know, it's it's not a knitting class, so you know, it's not a place to like for me to teach you a completely new skill. But I'm always happy to help in small ways. Oh, somebody's friend is here.
That's Ellie. That's Ellie.
Is she your granddaughter?
She is. Oh. And there's the other one. That's Adelie.
Hi, girls. Hi.
Hi.
So I was just going to add for the knit along that the only thing that you ask us is to knit something with your yarn or your patterns, if you want to be eligible for a prize.
Well, yeah. And if you want to be eligible for a prize, you have to start at the beginning of the knit along and end before the knit along ends. But you're welcome to bring a work in progress if you don't care about prizes. So, all right.
Oh, can I ask a real quick question about the Targhee Tango? I have my swatch ready to wash, and you said to wash it in hot water. Mm-hmm. Like, is that like steaming hot water?
As hot as you can get it from the tap. You don't need to boil it or anything like that. Just the hottest water you can get from your tap and a little wool soap, and then just squish some suds through it and let it sit until the water cools, and then rinse it.
Thank you.
I also just want to add quickly, we've been doing a mystery knit along through the summer, and some of you are participating and some of you aren't, but in case you're not, our mystery knit along each summer is a fundraising opportunity for us. And this year we've been raising money for a local dog rescue here in Ohio, which I volunteer for, and from which we've adopted our 3 little girls. And that will be, our fundraising will end on August 1st. And if you have it in your heart to donate something to the cause, we would appreciate so much. you can donate as little as $1 or as much as like $500, as much as you want. And the donation page is on our website. So please check that out if you have a minute and an extra $1. We would really appreciate it. Thank you. And so would the dogs. And this is what Gika is holding up her mystery knit along project. So a kind of a barn box crash course that was.
Good.
All right. Well,
but Anne, before you go, when will we know the name of the mystery knit along project?
Zach is back from vacation tomorrow. We have our company meeting tomorrow, so we'll get all the details.
Okay, I'm throwing that out there because some of us have submitted some names.
Yeah. All right. We'll
okay.
Look at all of them and then
okay. Put up the, you don't have to have an answer for it. I just want to throw that out there.
We're working on it.
Okay, I know you are. You work probably 12, 15 hours a day. So
Danielle just texted me that she's been exposed to COVID. So,
oh no. Okay, our thoughts are with her.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a happy Sunday afternoon. It's a beautiful day here. I hope it is where you are. Take care and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, Anne.
Bye.
Bye, Anne.
Bye.
Thank you.